All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're diving deep into the numbers behind a classic rivalry, the Commanders versus the Cowboys. We're going to go beyond the headlines and really unpack the data to see what the real story is for this matchup.
You know, you really couldn't paint a more different picture for these two teams this season. On one side, you've got the Commanders sitting at 4-10 in what's been a really disappointing year. And on the other, the Cowboys, who have one of the most dominant offenses in the league and are locked in for the playoffs. That contrast right there is really the core dynamic of this game.
So, let's start with what is probably the single biggest factor in this game, the Cowboys' offense, which, frankly, looks almost impossible to stop. Let's see what the numbers have to say about just how powerful they are. This number right here, it says it all. The Cowboys are averaging nearly 393 yards per game, which puts them at the very top of the league. And that's not just a random statistic. It means they are consistently marching down the field, dominating defenses on pretty much every single possession.
Of course, yards don't mean much if you can't turn them into points, right? Well, the Cowboys are elite there too. They're putting up an average of 29.3 points per game, which is just proof of how lethal their offense is. They don't just move the ball, they finish drives.
So when you put all of this data together, the conclusion is pretty clear. Statistically speaking, we are looking at the most complete and the most dangerous offense in the entire league. And here it is. This is the single most glaring piece of data that shows why this matchup is such a nightmare for the Commanders. The Cowboys' offense generates about 393 yards per game, while the Commanders' defense gives up almost the exact same number, 388 yards to their opponents. I mean, for Washington, this is basically the definition of a perfect storm.
So how is Dallas going to exploit this obvious advantage? It's simple, the passing game. It's no secret that Washington has one of the weakest pass defenses in the NFL. And when you factor in Dak Prescott's incredible efficiency in crucial moments, we're talking third downs and in the red zone, it lines up perfectly with the Commanders' biggest weakness.
The data looks pretty one-sided, doesn't it? But still, you have to ask the question, is there anything the Commanders can hang their hat on? Do they have any shot at all in this game? Okay, so let's flip the coin and look at the other side. Even though they're the clear underdog on paper, is there an area where the Commanders might be able to pull off a surprise?
Surprisingly, yeah, Washington has actually found a spark in its running game over the last few weeks. Specifically, Krosky Merritt's recent performance, 96 yards and a touchdown, that might just be their biggest ray of hope and maybe even their secret weapon.
And this is exactly where a window of opportunity opens up for Washington. While everyone is talking about the Cowboys' offense, their defense has been surprisingly vulnerable. If you look at advanced defensive metrics, they rank near the bottom of the league, especially in pass defense. And they've made a lot of costly mistakes all season long due to a lack of discipline.
So what should Washington's game plan be? It really has to be a three-step strategy. First, control the clock by running the football. Second, use that running threat to set up play-action passes with Marcus Mariota. And third, attack the imbalance in the Cowboys' defense, which has struggled against both the run and the pass.
But let's be realistic about the goal of this strategy. It's less about securing an outright win and more about keeping the game competitive until the very end. The idea is to bleed the clock, keep that explosive Dallas offense on the sideline, and maybe force them out of their own game plan.
All right, so we've laid out the strengths and weaknesses for both sides. What does it all mean when you put it together? It's time for the final, data-driven verdict.
When you compare the key factors head-to-head, the picture becomes pretty clear. Offensive power and the quarterback situation are a massive advantage for the Cowboys, no question. The only thing Washington can really hope for is to exploit those occasional lapses on the Cowboys' defense. But is that really enough to offset the other disadvantages?
In the end, the key to this game is Dallas's elite offense. The Commanders' quarterback situation, led by Marcus Mariota, just doesn't have enough firepower to keep up with an offense of this caliber. Even if Washington executes its game plan perfectly, they might keep it close for a while, but it's really unlikely they can reach the level of overall efficiency needed to actually win. And so all of this analysis leads us to one simple conclusion. Our database prediction is a Cowboys win, and with high confidence. The Cowboys are very likely going to win this game, but that brings up a much bigger question for the postseason. Is this weak, undisciplined Cowboys defense going to be a major problem for them in the playoffs when they face a true championship contender? Now that is the real story to watch.